Hi, welcome to Byte and Beyond with Uday. This is part 2 for Spring Boot REST API development made simple. In this part, we will cover service layer. We will complete the coding for the service layer, which we have discussed in the part 1. In case you haven't watched the part 1 yet, I would suggest please watch the part 1 first so you can connect the dots and you have a clear roadmap and you understand the all the concept clearly and you get your fundamentals strong. So I would suggest first watch part 1. For the part 1, you should see the I button somewhere on the screen. Click on it, you will navigate to the part 1 and then come back to part 2. Okay, so let's start. Okay, you will know what is the use of these two methods in very short. So let's create our first method. Let's implement or let's write a logic for our first method, which is save. Okay, so employee dot set ID. First of all, whenever the employee comes to this method, we will set ID for this method. So we will use get next ID. So it will generate the next ID, which is 1 in our case. Okay. And once the ID is generated and set it to the employee object, we will use the employee DB to store this object. So the whatever ID it is setted over here, I'm getting it as a key, as a primary key, dummy primary key in our case, and I am storing this object over here. That's it. For the sake of the simplicity, I am not adding any loggers or something. I will in our advanced REST APIs tutorial or video, I will cover those part. But for the simplicity, let's keep it simple for now. Okay. So over here we are simply generating a new ID and we are storing this employee object inside the employee dummy database. Okay. Now once the employee is created, let's move on to the another method which is update employee. So whenever you want to update an employee, you should first check that particular employee is available or not in your database. So that is why we have created this utility method. Okay, ideally we should create this utility method in a utility package where you can create static methods over there. But for the simplicity, I am creating a method over here. For your production application, you should not create uh, this utility method in your actual service layer. You should move this method in your utility. For simplicity, for now we are keeping it over here. Okay, so we are checking if the employee existed or not. In case the employee is not existed, let's say someone user is passing, try to update an employee with ID 5 and that employee is not exist in our database. So we will throw this exception. And in case that employee is available in our database, then we will simply update that employee. Okay. So let's update this employee in our database. Employee DB dot put and we are updating employee using the key, the primary key in our case, and we are updating that employee and we are simply returning this employee object. Okay, So whatever you have mentioned for the employee fields, for example, if you have updated first name or last name, that will be updated and stored in the your employee dummy database. Now let's find an employee by ID. So even if you want to find an employee by ID, you should first check that particular employee is available or not. So we are checking it. If it is available, we will return it. Otherwise, we will throw 404 not found exception. Okay. So now let's access our DB and say get and pass the ID. So we have already checked in this first statement the employee existed or not. If the employee is not there, the exception will be thrown. If the employee is there, available in the database, we will simply return it. It is simple as that. Now let's delete the employee. Let's write a logic to delete the employee. So in order to delete the employee, you should first check the employee is available or not. So we are checking that, and then we are simply deleting that employee from our database. So employee db dot remove, and I'm passing that ID over here. Okay, and in the end we have a find all method, which is responsible to get the or fetch the all the employees from our database. Okay, so let's let me access my employee DB. It is a map, so I will call its values method, which will return all the employees and not the ID. It will only return the employee collection of employee over here. Then I will stream from that collection and I will create a list from it. Okay, so what I'm doing over here, this is our database. Using the values method, I am getting the collection of employees. Then I am streaming through the collection and converting it to the list, and we are simply returning it. Okay, so our service layer is ready. Now, if you know, in the Spring Boot, we have a concept of dependency injection. For that, we have a different annotation. For example, REST controller. As I have explained, we have a separate layer uh, for our Spring Boot web application, controller layer, service layer, and repo layer. Okay, so uh, how we can mark this layer or this service as a service layer, or how I can say this is a service. So in some way, I need to tell Spring Boot that this is my employee service. So for that, Spring Boot provide this service annotation. So I will simply add this service annotation over here. So Spring Boot will know this is a service, and Spring Boot will create one object for this employee service, and it will store this created object inside the application context. It is a Spring Boot application context. You can think of application context as a bucket, okay, bucket or a storage room or something. Okay, so whenever I say at the rate service, and whenever after adding this annotation, other service annotation, if you start this Spring Boot application, the Spring Boot will scan for all the classes who have this kind of annotation service, other service, other REST controller, other repository. So Spring Boot will scan for this kind of classes, and if it is fine, this kind of classes, then it will create an object of this class, employee service IMPL class, and it will store that object inside the Spring Boot application context. It means Spring Boot has its own bucket where where it creates an object for all the classes wherever we are using this kind of annotation, and it is storing all these objects in a single in a central place, which is application context. You can think of like as a bucket. Okay, and whenever we need those kind of object from Spring Boot, we can get those object from the Spring Boot using the auto wired. So it is called dependency injection. So Spring Boot stores the all the object or all the beans or object to the application context, and whenever we use auto wired, at that time it will inject inject that particular object inside our class. For example, I will give you the example. For now, I have just given a high level, explanation of what is dependency injection. I will create a dedicated video for it. So now you can, this is the simple high level overview. Okay. I will explain you in detail how exactly it works. So, okay, this is good. Now, for the simplicity, let me create one, whenever I'm starting my application, let me create one default user in our database. Okay. So it will be good if we are creating, default user in our DB. So let's create one default user in our database. So for that, I am creating a constructor for employee service IMPL. Then let me create one object of employee inside this constructor, employee service IMPL. And let me, use the get next ID method to generate our ID. It will generate ID 1, okay, in our case. And in the same method, we are using get next ID itself. So all the classes will use this variable only, and everybody is updating this variable. So for example, by default, we are adding one user over here using, then the ID will be incremented to 1. Then if the next user comes, it will use the same method. Because the ID has already, the value is already incremented to 1. Now the ID will, this method will return 2, because if you see, we are incrementing this ID over here plus plus. So if it is 1, then it will return 2. If it is 2, it will return 3. Okay, that's how it works. Okay, let me give a first name, which is John Toy. John Toy. Okay, the first name is John and last name is Doy. Let me let me give the salary. Salary is in double, so 50,000 is John Doy's salary. Okay, sorry, I have accidentally created employee service object over here. Instead of we need employee. Instead of that, we need employee. Okay, now the object is created. We will use them. We will store this object inside the employee DB. This is a default user. So whenever you are starting your application, this user will be available. Okay. Okay. Now our service layer is ready. Nothing else is left over here. Okay. Let me stop my application in the meantime. Okay. Service layer is ready. So far what we have created, we have prepared our service layer, and we have annotated this layer as a @service. Okay, as you know, we have used this annotation. So Spring Boot will add this, create an object of this employee service IMPL class, and it will store this object inside the application context. So our service layer is ready. We don't have a repo layer. We are using the dummy database. The dummy database is the our map, and we are using this ID counter as for the primary key generation. Okay, and then we have a constructor for the to create a default user. And sorry, I'm I'm having cold, so excuse me. Sorry for the inconvenience. Actually, okay, and we have created all the methods: save, update, find by ID, delete by ID, find all, and these are two convenience or utility method. Now service layer is ready. This layer is ready, correct? Now let's create a control layer. So you need to focus on this layer because this is the layer where we are exposing our REST APIs. Over here, we have simply written a business logic just to store our employee object in our dummy database. Okay. Now we will create a controller layer where we expose or write a logic to create or expose the REST APIs. So thanks for watching part two. Uh, in this part, we have completed service layer. So I will create another part, which is part three, where we will cover controller layer. So see you in the next part. Thanks for watching. If you find my videos helpful, then please share, subscribe, like, comment. Thanks for watching. See you in the next part.